I wrote down the word homelessness, and then I changed one letter in that word, and I wrote down hopelessness.
They're pretty interlinked, don't you think? I feel like they're bedfellows.
653,000 people experience homelessness on any given night. 653,000 people.
I think we're missing the fact that those are our neighbors.
Oof. So we're going to listen to a clip. This clip is about criminalizing sleeping or camping in public streets or public places.
Every city, every village, every town lacks compassion and passes a law identical to this. Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping?
Oh my goodness.
We're both getting very emotional here.
Yeah, I am not proud of the times that I look away. But that discomfort is the thing that I think we need to sit with in order to make radical change.
100%.
I'm Ariane Porras. My definition of belonging is seeing and holding each other's humanity as sacred.
Hi.
Hello.
It is so good to be with you finally after years and years and years of knowing you.
Yeah.
Ariane, you are a social worker. You have a ton of experience in trauma.
Yeah.
You have a ton of experience in somatic practice. And you have been at the YMCA for the last 20 years as a county trainer.
Yeah, for 15, I believe, training, facilitating, navigating, helping people access resources, and now doing collective impact work.
Collective impact work. We're going to get into that for sure.
Yeah, every step has been life-changing. So it's been really wonderful.
We're going to talk about a lot of things today. Okay. We're going to cover understanding homelessness.
Okay.
We're going to cover understanding nervous systems.
My favorite.
Yeah. Trauma-informed versus trauma-inducing. When we were talking over there and during our prep conversation, I wrote down the word homelessness. And then I changed one letter in that word. And I wrote down hopelessness.
Yes. Oof. They're pretty interlinked, don't you think? I feel like they're bedfellows.
Let's talk a little bit about homelessness.
Okay.
Let's talk about some stats. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as of last year, homelessness in the U.S. has shown a significant increase. Most likely, a huge contribution is the climate change. 653,000 people experience homelessness on any given night. 653,000 people.
It's a large city.
That's a very large city. San Francisco is 750,000.
That's insane.
That's mind-blowing, actually. Wow. Holy hell. This is the highest number of people reported as unhoused since the counts began in 2007. First of all, why did they only begin in 2007?
That's a very good question.
That's
a very good
odd.
question.
2/3 of unhoused individuals are Black or Hispanic, despite these groups making up only 1/3 of the U.S. population.
1/3.
I don't even know how to process that. The last stat, because I can't even read anymore, between 21 and 22, there was 25% increase in the number of people who reported experiencing homelessness for the first time. I remember sleeping in my car. And I was really fortunate because I had a big truck at the time and I had a tech job. And I slept in a parking lot at my company at the time in Silicon Valley. And I remember my sister asking me if she should steal soap from my parents' bathroom for me. I thought that was the sweetest offering ever.
That is sweet.
I was caught by my boss for showering in one of the bathrooms. I'm not sure how that unfolded.
Yeah.
I lived in my car for, I think, almost a month.
Wow.
And may have gotten a 24-hour fitness membership just so that I could shower after that happened. My boss actually offered me his spare bedroom.
Wow.
And I moved in with him.
How did that feel?
Mind-blowing. And also weird.
Right. That makes sense.
Mind-blowing and weird at the same time because
Yeah.
my boss, and my
Right.
boss was, I mean, he's a wonderful guy, and also, it's him. And I slept on the floor in the bedroom. I didn't have any furniture, right? I came from my truck. But it was incredible to be held in community by a man, who is Japanese and had very different cultural experiences coming from Japan and offering me such warmth. I don't even know where to go at this point. What's coming up for you?
I think what came up for me when you said the stats of the who, Black and brown bodies who make 1/3 of the population, I thought, what a heavy burden we lay on our Black and brown bodies in this society.
Well, that burden isn't recent.
No, it's a continued burden.
That burden has been present since the birth of this country. The birth of this country is because of Black and brown communities. It was birthed on the backs of Black and brown communities.
It continues to survive because of Black and brown bodies.
Oh, 100%. We are in the midst of a very interesting case in the Supreme Court who is looking to criminalize sleeping in public. What is happening in the Supreme Court feels that there is a criminalization occurring around being human.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Talk about that.
How and why are we criminalizing existence? And who does it benefit to criminalize existing?
Who does it benefit?
Definitely not those Black and brown bodies.
It's benefiting somebody.
Right. So what is so important about disappearing people from everyday life?
What is so important about disappearing people?
Who are just trying to exist, who don't want to be sitting on that street, but have no other option or good options, right? Because I know people will say, oh, well, there's programs and there's housing. And as a social worker, I understand that. But I also understand the barriers that can occur to even accessing those options.
What are we not understanding about the unhoused situation? What are we missing here?
I think we're missing the fact that those are our neighbors.
Oof.
We can separate ourselves, right, in the way that our cultures are structured to say, oh, those aren't my people. But they are. They are. And so if we don't see them as our neighbors, as our part of our community, then we are perpetuating what the system is doing, which is trying to disappear them and dehumanize them.
We are subsumed in paradigms of dominance. We are subsumed in a paradigm of patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalistic ways of being. If we want to bring equity, if we want to bring dignity, if we want to bring collective impact, we've got to do it within these paradigms.
Yeah.
How can we start to see capitalism as a benefit for these communities? What can we do differently? How can we start to think outside the box?
That's the question that our team asks every day. And that's why we're trying to create more community-led spaces, because this is part of disrupting hierarchy, right?
Yes.
Is that when we put on a badge and we have these titles and these positions in these organizations, we are tasked with these things and we start feeling like, oh, we need to have the answers. We need to come up with them by ourselves. Although leadership is important, there is wisdom within the community. And so sharing that power and distributing it to the community and not just holding it as an agency is what we've seen in our team is going to lead us to create more radical and innovative solutions.
Shireen Daniels defines anti-racism as the distribution of power.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to listen to a clip where Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor is about to share some thoughts, which I'll be very interested to hear. It's about this clip is about criminalizing sleeping or camping in public streets or public places.
Okay.
And the court is looking at whether or not local laws that prohibit this actually violate the Eighth Amendment, which is against cruel and unusual punishment. The question that they're exploring is it constitutional to penalize people for experiencing homelessness?
The fact that we have to pause to ask this question is really intense.
Is it constitutionalized to penalize people for experiencing? What is our contribution here to this homelessness place?
That is the better question. Right. Why are we contributing a systemic issue to an individual?
We are penalizing something, an individual that we have contributed to the situation.
They did not get there on their own, much to what is usually said about the unhoused. It's not this individual failure.
No.
The majority, from what I understand, is from like excess medical bills, which again,
well,
right. I mean, talk about human rights. So, yeah, this is the question that is being posed then.
Shall we do this?
Listen.
Let's listen.
Let's listen.
Your intent was to remove, stated by your mayor, intent is to remove every homeless person and give them no public space to sit down with a blanket or lay down with a blanket and fall asleep.
That's not the intent of the law, and I would like to address that point because the other side...
Why don't you answer the basic question?
Yes. So
it's not about fires. It's not about tents. It's about not being a time and place restriction, about eliminating all choices.
So we think that it is harmful for people to be living in public spaces, on streets and in parks, whatever bedding materials, when humans are living in those conditions. We think that that's not compassionate and that there's
it's
no
not, but
dignity in that.
neither is providing them with nothing.
Well,
to alleviate that situation.
This is a difficult policy question, Justice Sotomayor. It is.
Where do we put them if every city, every village, every town lacks compassion and passes a law identical to this? Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping?
So this is a necessity defense, as I mentioned, under Oregon law is available. States are able to address these concerns. This is a complicated policy question. We believe that the Eighth Amendment analysis, to go back to it, focuses on the low-level
What's so complicated about letting someone somewhere sleep with a blanket in the outside if they have nowhere to sleep? The laws against defecation, the laws against keeping things unsanitary around yourself, those have all been upheld. The only thing this injunction does is say you can't stop someone from sleeping in a public place without a blanket.
Oh my goodness. There's emotion.
We're both getting very emotional here.
Yeah.
Why don't we stay with that?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm actually relieved to hear Justice Sotomayor say what is so complicated about being compassionate. I didn't expect to feel that relief because I brace now when I think of the Supreme Court. That gives a little hope. The relief gives a little hope. But I think the fact that this person is continuing to say it's a complicated issue is so wrong and dismissive. It's not. It's a human being.
Yeah. Being human is not a complicated issue. It's a complex issue.
Yes.
But it's not complicated.
No.
Thank you for your emotion. Thank you for your vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah. You're welcome. I have learned to hold my humanity sacred, right? It's the thing that I think is going to save us and hold us together is if we do that.
You're on the front lines.
Yeah.
Talk about this.
It's It is so unkind for us to think that with the privileges that we have of having a car, of having a home, of having clothes, of having money to spend on food, that that is easy to come by and sustain when we work really hard day after day to just make sure that that can continue to happen. And it is unkind to think that we are very far away from sitting on that street ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we have to kill a little bit of our humanity to think that we're far away from that. And that, I think, is the danger, because we're not. And the discomfort that we feel around looking at those humans, and me included, I understand it is, I am not proud of the times that I look away. But that discomfort is the thing that I think we need to sit with in order to make radical change.
100%. 100%.
And the healing journey that I've had personally, at least, has included having to build a different relationship with discomfort.
So let's unpack discomfort just a little bit. So discomfort has value.
Yes.
The value of discomfort is
saying, hey, pay attention to this. There's something here that needs your attention. I think at the most basic level, that's what it is.
And when we lean into that, then we can actually get some data.
Right. We have to be curious about it to understand what is going on around us that is causing that discomfort, or what is coming up inside of us that is causing that discomfort.
How do we get curious in the midst of discomfort when we're in denial? You had said during our prep conversation that so much of this country and the world is in denial. And then you said...
And then I said, well, you know, denial is a stage of grief.
I think it's one of the very first stages of grief.
Right. And so I always think of Octavia Butler's quote that God is change. And that makes me, when I heard that, I was like, that does resonate for me. And if that is true, and if this resonance is true, that means we are in a constant state of grieving. And so as I do my work professionally and personally, I'm thinking about, how are we grieving? What places do we have to hold collective grief rituals, to hold individual grief rituals? And I see scarcity around that. And I think that's part of the disconnect that we have in this society.
I agree.
You know?
Mexico has criers that you can hire to attend your funeral and weep for those who can't cry. I mean, that's remarkable.
It is. It is. But it's also co-regulation. Is it not? At our most basic point, it's co-regulation. It's saying, I understand it's hard to access this grief for you, so I'm going to come alongside you and do it with you. And you can join in or not, but I am expressing something for the both of us. And isn't that community?
Isn't that dignity?
It is. It's showing dignity to the emotion and to the humanity in each person. We also have gritos when we're celebrating, right? Before each song. I don't know if you listen to a lot of like Mexican regional music.
What's gritos?
I don't want to blow out the mic, but it's
try it. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. This is the most Mexican I'm going to be on a podcast. I love it. But before a ranchera or a bolero, or usually an upbeat song, they'll go, you know, like that wasn't great, but like it's guttural. Bring breath up from your stomach and just let it out to introduce this song.
Wow.
Yeah.
This was in Coco.
Yes, exactly.
When
he does that.
When he's about to get on the stage, and I get that one of the performers before him is doing that or something like that.
Right. And it's a great way to just get into your body, right? And be present for that moment too. That's what I understand now with nervous systems. But
let's unpack co-regulation. And let's talk about what it is. Let's talk about some nervous systems. And let's talk about the trauma that occurs for the unhoused population.
You know, we're not born knowing how to regulate. It's through co-regulation that we learn how to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why attachment is so important. That's why having present caregivers makes a huge difference when it comes to brain development, when it comes to nervous system development, right? So that in itself, I think, shows us how powerful we are for each other, that we need each other to stay sane, to stay calm, to stay ready for what this world brings. So I think that example of like hiring criers for a funeral is a beautiful example of co-regulation, at least in my culture. But
stunning.
There's signs everywhere, that we need each other. We're not meant to do this life alone. We don't heal completely in isolation. We heal in community. There's a lot of processing that we've had to learn to do on our own, and sure, it can be effective. I, as an only child, experienced a lot of time alone, right? And I'm in my head constantly thinking about all sorts of things. But the most precious moments where I feel held and seen have to happen with another person.
100%. I mean, trauma, 90% of trauma is relational trauma.
Yes.
Right? Which means that 90% of trauma comes from being in relationship with someone who did not treat you well.
Right.
And there's a reason why we have the data through McKinsey, through Gallup, through Deloitte, that shows that workplaces are so disengaged. That workplace behavior is harming people.
Right. And that, as I started to learn about somatics and about trauma, is what I ended up bringing back to my team, is saying, not only are we responsible for how we co-regulate with each other, but as we do this community engagement work, we are responsible for how we show up in a room and how we engage with that community. And if you don't know where you're at in your nervous system and where you are just grounded in this world, it's going to be really hard to adjust that.
Do you have people that you have to contend with who don't believe in co-regulation?
All the time.
How do you start to speak about that?
I think I try to not only give personal examples, but point out things in their life that I'm like, well, that was helpful when that other person did that with you, right? That's just, we have little bits of co-regulation in our culture still. We just don't know how to recognize them. We don't have the language around that because I think our culture is so individualistic that we've lost the language around
I fully agree
co-regulation,
with that.
but also, even recognizing it, right?
You say here, our department at the YMCA started learning about trauma and our language has changed. We say things like, I think I'm activated right now. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
As this knowledge permeates, it makes a huge difference in how we show up for each other as a result. And the community we serve, give us more examples.
When I hear our team say words like, I feel activated, or I feel like I'm a little bit dysregulated, or I had to take a pause and gather myself, I just smile because I'm like, look, they can recognize it. They're actively noticing, which is all that somatics is right? Noticing what's going on for you in this moment. How are you existing in this moment, in this situation? I had my coworker Brandy share that at one of the trainings that she was giving, she could sense that the room was dysregulated. And so she asked for a pause and asked everyone to do butterfly hugs. And I was like, oh my gosh, can you share that story at my funeral? Like, I will be so happy.
We'll have gritos at your funeral.
Yes.
And we'll have butterfly hugs.
We're
hugs.
We're
already making a list.
Please, exactly.
This is fantastic.
And so just the fact that they are saying and doing these things shows me that they are more in relationship with themselves and therefore can be more in relationship, in deeper relationship with the people around them. And that includes the community that we're serving.
This is really interesting. You said that they're more in relationship to themselves in order for them to be in greater relationship with community. But you also said a little bit earlier that we don't actually heal in isolation. How do I reconcile the two?
I think it's an interdependence, and that's something we're not familiar with either.
Great. Talk more about that. That's fantastic.
I think the beautiful balance of being a human in this world is understanding that there's a reciprocity within ourselves that we have to nurture that is going to extend and amplify the reciprocity that we can have with the collective. It's this this back and forth, right? I'm a Libra, so balance is also very important to me. But this relationship that we can nurture within ourselves is the thing that overflows into how we connect with others. So that interdependence between the two, I think, is critical.
100%.
Yeah.
And how has somatic experiencing impacted your own growth, and how have you brought that into the team?
I've been very fortunate that this career at the YMCA helped me kind of have a parallel process in my personal healing and the work that I do. Because had I not had to become a trainer on trauma-informed care, I don't think I would have had the opportunity or capacity, right? Because work takes up so much of our time and of our day. And so I took that opportunity to learn more outside of work. And once I started understanding that my body is always working for my good, I started to see it as a source of unconditional love that I carry with me all the time. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was a game changer for me.
Say that again, please.
Once I understood that my body is always working for my good, I started to see it as a source of unconditional love that I carry with me all the time.
I invite everyone who's watching and listening to take that in. How did you get there? How did you arrive there? I mean, you shared your historical, trajectory.
A little bit, yeah.
How did you, I mean, what you endured was not at all in favor of unconditional love.
No. I ended up in a marriage that was so awful that my body was screaming at me. I was in chronic pain 24 hours a day and just learned to exist with it. Like, it was just normal for me. And the doctors and specialists that I went to didn't give me good answers. And there was always something in my body that said, no, that doesn't sound like the solution. And so when I finally ended that marriage, I realized, okay, my brain hasn't gotten me to where I need to be to really heal whatever's going on. I think I need to figure out what my body's really trying to say. And so when I started hearing, oh, your body is another person that you need to relate to, I took that invitation and I realized, oh, you were trying to protect me. My body was reacting in a severe way because I could not recognize the level of danger that I was in.
Wow.
Right? Talk about a ride or die. Our bodies are so faithful. I love that. Right?
So faithful. What do you say to a body that is steeped in fear, being an unhoused individual, living on the streets, not knowing where my next meal will come from, not knowing if I will be harassed, executed, just discriminated in so many ways and bullied by passerbys. How do I start to have a somatic experience as an unhoused individual?
I always start with affirmation. And I validate the fact that all that fear that you're holding is absolutely reasonable for the situation that you're in.
So acknowledging what is.
Acknowledging and saying, I see you. And the fact that you're scared makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And your body is trying to keep you alive.
I love that. I was talking with my therapist, and I recently started seeing somebody, and I am really enjoying how well it's going, and my body is having a huge fear reaction to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I went into therapy and I said, I don't understand why I have this huge fear reaction, and I don't know why I can't just be happy with all of this. And she's like, you really don't get why? Rajkumar, you really don't get it?
You, Rajkumar, yeah, right.
And I was like, well, I don't want it to be this way.
There it is. Yeah.
I want to be able to just, take it in. And that's not how bodies work.
No. And our brain is wired for safety, not for happiness. So we have to actually address that first, right? And say, okay, there's fear here.
I'm going to repeat these sentences because I think you're dropping bombs left and right. I think,
Okay.
or truth bombs. I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to use the word bomb anymore because now there's just way too many genocides that are happening globally. So you're just dropping truths left and right. And if the audience could just take this in, we are not wired for happiness.
No, that's a bummer, right?
Such a bummer.
It's a huge bummer. When I realize that, I'm like, oh man, it is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not ideal. Like, thank you, brain, for keeping me safe. And I would like to have some happiness. So how can we negotiate?
Yeah. And serotonin,
right?
90% of serotonin is made in the gut.
In the gut. Oh, are we going to go there? It's a whole other thing.
Let's go there. Should we go there?
Okay, let's touch on it.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety.
Very common. Mm-hmm.
Shame.
Mm-hmm.
Digestive issues.
Mm-hmm.
The diverticulitis.
Mm-hmm. Colitis. I mean, we could go on.
Colitis.
So many gut issues that we have.
So many gut issues. Do you want to share what's coming up for you in the somatic experiencing piece? Because
if our gut is our second brain, our brains are not at peace, right? Our brains are feeling both our brains are sensing a lot of danger.
Yeah.
We're not taught how to address this brain down here.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, our gut is our source of wisdom when it comes to somatics, right? It's aligning with that inner resonance that allows us to navigate this world. And so that's actually, it's our intuition, right? What is your gut reaction? We have that phrase in our culture for a reason, because it is our anchor, our source of navigation. And so in the somatic world, they don't talk a lot about like what we ingest and how we consume things and how that affects our experience. But there is one teacher that I learned from, Luis Mojica, who does explain that, and how nutrition and the things that we consume are either going to activate us more, neutralize, or depress. And so it is the gut is honestly the one of the quickest ways we can get to feeling a little bit more regulated, but we don't talk about that a lot.
So we have soda.
We have soda.
We have fast food chains.
Yes.
We have desert communities.
Right.
We have Monsanto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I saw a video once. This was like back in Facebook days. So that's a long time ago when they were like, having the rewind button on a VCR. Maybe, I don't even know. That's maybe too far back. But there was two corns, two cobs of corn. Is that how you say it in English? And one was Monsanto and one was organic.
Okay.
And it was in the wild, and they just kind of propped it up in a cornfield with a camera. And the one that was organic got eaten.
Even nature knows. You can't fool nature. You really can't.
And she's pissed, man.
She is pissed. I was just thinking this morning about how we are nature. And we are so divorced from that in our culture. And that I feel like nature is trying to say, hey, this way of living is not sustainable. We need to figure out another way. And like, it's mirroring the turmoil that we have as humans in these societies.
Yeah. Jill Nagel was on the show recently, and we talked about the white supremacy mythology. That's all her work. And she opened our conversation with, which I loved, this amazing quote, which is, we are at peace when we belong to the land. We are at war when we feel the land belongs to us.
Absolutely. That's colonization.
As a Latina, you say that you use this term, white dominant norms. Talk a little bit about what that is and how do we experience that?
I started working in collective impact right at the beginning of the pandemic. And, collective impact means you're looking at systems and how they interact, how they affect the community. And so that was one of the first things that we started looking at was white dominant norms in our culture. How are they playing out? What are they, first of all? Right?
What are they?
some of them, there's about 12, I think, on the final list, but perfectionism, urgency, a need for hierarchy, things like that.
Need for isolation.
Right.
Let's actually name them out loud.
There's urgency, there's a need for hierarchy, individualism versus collective. Perfectionism is huge. Mostly when you look at that list, you're like, oh, this is how we run companies. This is our work culture, right?
Yeah, the hustle. Figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Get it done right away.
Right.
There's even, extraction, like resource, like harboring resources.
Right. Everything, the incident with George Floyd had happened. Everything was unraveling in our culture around that time. I don't need to remind everyone about what that was like. But our team started looking at how can we disrupt these things in the way that we work. And we're one department in a big branch, right? But we said, let's figure this out. Let's at least talk about it. And that, I'm really grateful for that leadership and that freedom. And so we started changing little by little the way that we ran meetings, the way that we thought about things. And because we were focused on convening partners to talk about how to eliminate barriers for families to access resources, we work in a prevention space, in primary prevention. And so we want to get ahead of problems, right? Mm-hmm. And so we felt like it was very important to consider those things. Because if we are prioritizing the needs of the community, then that means we need to disrupt these norms that prevent community from being nurtured, right? We need to think about things a little bit differently. And I thought, okay, our job is to help rebuild villages. That's really what it is. We need to come back to rebuilding these villages. And I had already started the process of decolonization myself. And so I thought, okay, it's about being in relationship with instead of in dominance or control over, which white dominant norms promote being in control or dominance over. That's at its most basic principle. That's what it is.
Why do people dominate?
Because power is incredibly seductive.
Not only is power incredibly seductive, it is actually a dopamine release.
Right.
It is the most addictive substance on the planet. The second most addictive substance is sugar.
Oh man, here we are back again, right? So if our diets have a lot of sugar, and if our society is structured around hierarchy and gaining more and more power, that's a setup. That's a setup for very poor community structures. Yeah.
This conversation is so rich and vibrant and also despairing.
Absolutely. I feel like we keep coming back because this is what, if it is weakening our community structures, that leads directly to where we started, which is the unhoused, right? That is a consequence. The fact that we have so many people on the street is because our community structures have been weakened.
But you want to disrupt colonization, by creating collective impact and communal ways of being. How do you do that, Ariane, subsumed in a white supremacist paradigm?
It is incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard because we have to not only care for our staff who are doing this work, who carry their own traumas. We all have it, right? And we have to create spaces for community to come in. And so we have to share power and we have to constantly be vigilant. And that's what our team tries to do, is to be vigilant about the ways that we are hoarding power so that we can share it. And because it's insidious and it comes up in the smallest things, even creating an agenda, right, can be a way to hoard power. So it is creating consciousness, which can add to the fatigue that we already feel. So taking your time about it, and that's what we've done. We've just slowly been trying to disrupt little by little, and also talking about what are everyone's unique ways of disrupting, right? What does this look like for you? Because we are all beautiful individuals, and so we bring different things to this table. And so that's what we do. We try to build consciousness and that awareness. And then once we have that awareness, we can gain some more understanding around it. And then we can change our behavior. But it's the slow scaffolding that takes time, takes a lot of investment, and that our culture is constantly buzzing around us to say, you don't have the time, you don't have the luxury to spend it. And we have to push against that tide every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Such an honor to have you in the studio, Ariane. And in closing this conversation, which I don't want to do, but I'll stalk you in San Diego and come visit and figure out some way to collaborate with you.
Deal.
What is your hope for the future and how we can start to see with greater dignity, greater compassion, greater empathy? How do we start to view the unhoused population in ways that shift this?
I think as we continue to live on this edge of society, that we continue to see how close we are to that edge ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite definitions of mental health right now is a firm grip on reality. And I think if we commit ourselves to, how we said in the beginning, building a different relationship with discomfort, we can have a better grip on our own reality and then see how close our neighbor is to our reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we live in that space of not continuing to isolate and shield ourselves, but to find little moments where we can connect with all of our neighbors, spend more time in community, in spaces that we don't typically have in our routine, we can find bridges between us. And I think that's what we'll need to survive, honestly.
That's what we need. Our bridges.
Bridges.
How can I start to build a bridge right now? Right now. How can I go out in the world after this interview? How can I go out as Raj Kumari and build a bridge?
This sounds so silly and simple, but I think as we move about the world, are we looking at each other? Are we trying to connect, or are we looking down and simply going about our little routine? Are we making the time to have that brief contact, even to say, hi, I see you, without using those words? I think honestly, that is one step that is hard for us, especially with the trauma that we hold now after the pandemic. It's made us more scared of each other. And that fear of each other is what we have to continue to disrupt. So finding ways to be less scared of each other, I think, is the way.
And choosing kindness.
Choosing kindness.
At all cost. How can we choose kindness at all cost?
Find a small way to be kind and build that capacity for kindness. Find a bigger way next time to be kind.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for coming all the way from San Diego. Thank you for sharing your brilliance.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.